December 17, 1944. A quiet, snow-covered crossroads south of Malmedy, Belgium. The Ardennes forest was muffled in a pristine white, reducing visibility to less than 100 yards. Battery B of the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion sat idling in their trucks, completely unaware that out of the freezing mist, massive German King Tiger and Panther tanks were closing in. They had stumbled directly into the path of Kampfgruppe Peiper, the ruthless spearhead of the 6th Panzer Army's offensive. Outgunned and cut off, the 120 Americans did what any soldiers in their impossible position would do. They surrendered, weapons down, hands up. The German troops, elite Waffen-SS clad in winter camouflage, efficiently disarmed them and herded them into an open, snowy field. To the Americans, surrender meant a long, miserable march to a prisoner of war camp, but it also meant survival. They stamped their freezing feet, waiting. Then the geometry of the battlefield shifted. German machine gunners began setting up MG-42s, deliberately aiming not at the road to guard against reinforcements, but directly at the prisoners. A German tank commander watched from his turret, casually lighting a cigarette. Near the lead vehicle, an SS officer casually raised his arm, a gesture as lazy as signaling for a drink in a tavern. The machine guns opened fire. The sound was like ripping canvas. At 1,200 rounds per minute, tracer fire cut through the falling snow, tearing into the helpless Americans. Men fell in clusters. The initial slaughter lasted barely 15 seconds, followed by the sickening crunch of SS boots in the snow as they methodically walked among the dying, delivering point-blank execution shots to anyone still twitching. Lieutenant Virgil Lary survived only by playing dead, suppressing his breathing while a German boot prodded his leg. Within 10 minutes, 84 American soldiers had been massacred. Kampfgruppe Peiper simply rolled on, leaving the bodies to freeze in the Belgian winter. 7 days later, American combat engineers from the 291st Battalion cautiously approached the crossroads. The snow had stopped, leaving the field pristine except for the dark shapes of 84 frozen corpses. Captain Antonio Vero recognized the historical weight of the moment. He took out his camera and methodically documented the atrocities. The execution-style wounds, the powder burns on faces, the bodies of men who had died with their hands still raised in surrender. Those grainy, black and white photographs changed the course of the war in the Ardennes. They spread like wildfire from unit to unit, passed from hand to hand among cooks, mechanics, and frontline infantrymen. These weren't anonymous casualties. They were American boys who had followed the rules of war and had been butchered for it. And as the GIs stared at the frozen faces of their executed brothers, a dark, unspoken shift occurred. The rules of war shattered. By early January, a phantom policy had taken root across the American lines. No general issued the order. No colonel put his name on a directive. It lived entirely in knowing looks, quiet conversations between sergeants, and a sudden, brutal efficiency on the battlefield. When regular German Wehrmacht troops surrendered, they were processed and sent to POW camps. But the SS? The SS were marked for death. American units began actively hunting for the infamous SS blood group tattoo located under the left arm. If a surrendering soldier bore that mark, his fate was sealed. They were pulled out of lines, marched into the woods, and never seen again. White surrender flags were ignored. Even German medics wearing Red Cross armbands were shot on sight. When one American rifleman was questioned for gunning down an SS medic at 200 yards, he simply pointed to a photograph of the Malmedy Massacre tucked into his helmet band. The moral high ground had evaporated, replaced by cold, calculated vengeance. Word of the American retaliation quickly reached the German high command. SS units realized that surrender was no longer a guarantee of survival. Trapped in impossible tactical situations, they chose to fight to absolute annihilation, turning every skirmish into a bloodbath. When a Wehrmacht surgeon officially protested to Swiss intermediaries that American troops had stormed his aid station, evacuated the regular German wounded, and executed the SS patients right on their stretchers, the American response was chillingly brief. They sent back the photos of Malmedy, effectively stating that the SS had forfeited their right to human mercy. When Nazi Germany finally collapsed in May 1945, the scales of military justice were fundamentally tipped. American military tribunals brought 73 former SS members to trial for the Malmedy Massacre. The evidence was overwhelming. 43 defendants were sentenced to death, and 23 to life in prison. Justice officially was served for the 84 men of Battery B. But the other side of the ledger remained permanently blank. No American soldier ever faced prosecution for the retaliatory executions of surrendering SS troops. No investigations were ever opened into the medics shot in the snow or the prisoners marched into the woods. The unwritten rule remained exactly that, unwritten, untracked, and purposefully forgotten by official histories that preferred a cleaner narrative of righteous liberation. Today, a monument stands at the crossroads south of Malmedy. It lists the names of the 84 American boys who were betrayed and murdered in the snow. But it says absolutely nothing of the dark, reciprocal brutality their deaths unleashed. A chilling reminder of how easily the fragile laws of humanity can be completely erased by the very atrocities they were designed to prevent. In winter, the fields south of Malmedy still fall silent under snow. The modern road cuts cleanly through the Ardennes now. Tour buses occasionally stop. Visitors step out, reading the engraved names on the monument while cold wind drifts across the same open field where the prisoners once stood. The forest looks peaceful, almost indifferent. If you didn't know the history, you would never guess that one of the darkest moments of the Western Front happened in this quiet Belgian clearing. But history never truly leaves a place like this. The surviving witnesses carried that mourning with them for the rest of their lives. Men like Lieutenant Virgil Laurie would later testify about the machine guns, the smoke, the bodies collapsing in the snow. Their stories formed the official narrative of Malmedy, the massacre that shocked the American army and hardened its resolve during the brutal winter of the Battle of the Bulge. Yet, among veterans who fought in those freezing forests, another memory persisted. Not written in reports, not preserved in trial transcripts. A memory passed quietly between soldiers long after the war ended. They remembered the anger, they remembered the photographs, and they remembered the silent understanding that followed. War had always existed inside rules, fragile agreements meant to preserve some thin boundary between combat and murder. But Malmedy showed how quickly those boundaries could collapse. Once the first rule was broken, every rule after it became negotiable. For the men fighting in the Ardennes that winter, the war did not feel like a courtroom or a tribunal. It felt like survival, like vengeance, like settling a score written in blood on frozen ground. And so the story of Malmedy became something larger than a single massacre. It became a warning, because wars are rarely remembered exactly as they were fought. Nations remember heroism. They remember liberation. They build monuments to courage and sacrifice. But the darker parts, the quiet retaliations, the moral compromises, the moments when even the victors stepped beyond the lines, those pieces often fade into silence. Not because they didn't happen, but because remembering them forces an uncomfortable truth. The laws of war only exist as long as both sides choose to believe in them. On December 17, 1944, in a snowy field near Malmedy, that belief shattered. And for the soldiers who fought through the Ardennes afterward, the snow never looked the same again.